I think we're ready to start. First of all, I would like to thank you all for being here and for taking the time to participate in a debate about degrowth and agriculture. Um, the debate among the panelists will take almost 1 hour and a half, and at the end, we will also have 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on how chatty we feel, to open it up to questions from the audience. So if you have during our discussions anything that you want to clarify, please make a note of it on your phone so that you don't forget about it at the end. As we all probably know, this has been a devastating summer with deadly heat waves, floods, and all sorts of extreme weather events. And I think that it is actually almost impossible to not feel the urgency to change the way we are doing things, including agriculture. Because this is an industry that not only takes a huge toll on the environment, on our health, and on the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, but is also an industry that needs to be resilient under these conditions, an industry that needs to keep on feeding people under these conditions. So, the question is, are we able now to find alternatives to monoculture practices, heavily industrialized farming, and relying heavily on chemical inputs such as fertilizers and pesticides? That's what we will try to find out today from our panelists, whom I'm going to ask now to briefly introduce themselves and maybe a little bit about their activity. Starting with Anka, you want to start?
I don't necessarily want, but I can. Good afternoon. My name is Anka. I was thinking now how to introduce myself, and I realized that here when I was presented to other people by the people that know me already, I'm normally introduced as Anka from Kuib or Anka from Iași. Iași is a northern city in the northeastern part of Romania. So Anka from Iași, from Redur, from Kuib. So I'm rather seen by the others as a green social entrepreneur, but I don't see myself as this wouldn't be my main. I don't know what to call it, quality, no, occupation. So rather I'm the co-founder of the organization that launched these two social enterprises. The organization is called My Bine. In English we translate it For the Better. And the organization aims at capacity building for sustainability. You used to say, now we speak more about resilience. And we have this integrative, holistic approach on sustainability on the 3 dimensions. And what we call ethical consumption is the conductive wire. And from here, the interest in approaching food and what we did linked with food since 2009 when we started. All kinds of, dimensions of sustainable food, from community-supported agriculture initiatives, fair trade. We promoted fair trade movement, urban gardening, education, some attempts on education on permaculture with some other organizations from the country. We work since about 3-4 years very actively on food waste. And of course, as I already mentioned, we are known for this social enterprise called Kuib that we launched a decade ago, and probably is the most sustainable entity in the HoReCa system in Romania, in the bistro restaurants. Yeah. And maybe I should say as well about degrowth that I'm very linked with the subject. I followed a PhD at one point on this topic, but I finished it back in 2013 when I decided to leave the academic world and to be rather like me, to give all my energy and resources in doing and talking less and writing less about it.
My name is Ionuț Bădică. I have many hats. One of the hats is that I'm the president of Permaculture Research Institute of Romania and one of the founder. I'm the manager of the Sol și Suflet farm, which is more than a farm, is the residential space for education, production, and innovation in regenerative agriculture. Started 3 years ago in somewhere in Vladenia, Dâmbovița County. We are researching at the farm. I'm mostly gonna say something about me related to the regenerative agriculture and context. We're researching regenerative agriculture production and business model for small human scale farms. Almost we say that we're 85% there to have a recipe, and through this project also we train future farmers. We have an internship program where future colleagues actually train how to become farmers. I mean, we sell, of course, veggies, because this is what we do at the farm in Brașov and Bucharest. And what's really important to mention, that we do the education in a business context. We believe that if you really want to become a farmer, you really need to put the hand and to have as much season in your boot, at least one for starters, and then you're gonna see if it's for you or not. So yeah, this is our, and yeah, we speaking for my colleagues also, we envision a world where many farms and create a network of farms that create a vibrant society based on mutual respect and help with customers. Yeah, more of my work and my colleagues at socialsoufflet.ro and Permaculture Research Institute.
Hi everyone, I'm Logan Stranchak. I'm a garden team member at Zsámboki Biokerт, which is a 3.5 hectare organic bio-intensive vegetable and fruit garden about 1 hour from Budapest. I'm a co-founder of Cargonomia, which is a cargo bicycle logistics center and local food distribution point, an experimental degrowth research center in Budapest, but we're very active in the countryside in the village of Zsámbok, where the farm is as well. I'm also a researcher and instructor at Central European University, which historically was in Budapest, but now is located in Vienna, where I teach the course Practical Introduction to Agroecology and Organic Gardening Systems. And I'm a member of the Hungarian Agroecology Network, which is a young but active network of researchers and practitioners trying to build an agroecology network in Hungary. And the research projects which I participate in, which I'm most proud of, typically deal with farmer-to-farmer education, focusing on regenerative agricultural principles in practice and agroecology in practice on the farm. And through all of these positions, I try to play a multifunctional role, because I can bring the experience, the realities from the farm, but I also see the perspective as a researcher observing trends in alternative food movements, and certainly I work really hard to help communicate what is going on the farm to audiences and customer bases and concerned citizens who may not see the day-to-day realities on the farm. And if we're talking about degrowth transition or sustainability transition, I really challenge myself to be multifunctional and hard to quantify. So not just defining myself as just a researcher or just as a farmer or just as an activist. I think we need to be working towards training people to be a little bit of all of these, because good knowledge of the realities of the farm leads to good research, leads to good activism, and the same way flip the other way as well. So I'm proud to be somewhat hard to quantify as far as what my professional position is, and I've been working hard on being able to maintain this stasis as someone with a lot of different responsibilities and involved in a number of projects, and perhaps most importantly, involved in a network of activities linking farmers with activists and linking farmers with citizens, because I believe in the capabilities of good functioning networks. Thank you.
Congratulations. So I'm Damien, and congratulations to the organizers. It's amazing to have this festival for these 3 days. I represent Workshops Without Border, Atelier Fara Frontiere, an association based in Bucharest, which has got fundamentally a social mission to assist vulnerable adults to join the conventional job market. So very briefly, because it's also linked to degrowth, but not to agriculture, we collect waste electrical from companies and individuals, and we recondition. We are the only company in Romania authorized to recondition and not to recycle. So we do collect over there. There is a little stand. If you've got anything that is broken with you, we are happy to collect it as long as it's got a plug or batteries. We also have a workshop where we collect advertising banners and we transform them into bags and all sorts of products, which is called Remesh. And they are also in the stand over there. And last but not least, of course, is Bio & Co. is our social eco-certified farm, which started in 2015. Here again, it started from a social motivation in a small village, 30 kilometers north of Bucharest, with 80% of the population from Roma ethnic, people who are left out with no mobility possibilities, excluded and marginalized from the job market. So my predecessors decided to start a farm there to certify it, eco-certified since the beginning, and to produce, similarly to Ionuț, vegetables that we sell farm to fork as short as possible in baskets that we recuperate and with the lowest CO2 emission. That's it. I'm so happy to be here today.
Thank you all. We're also happy to have you here. The first question. Many of us usually buy food from supermarkets and don't really think nor care so much about where our food comes from or how it is produced. So my first question to you all, just to kickstart the discussion and to get to know you a little bit better, is how did you get to care about food, and what role does food play now in your life? And maybe keep the same order so it's easier.
I just noticed that you didn't introduce yourself, Alexandra, and maybe in order to give me more time as well to think about the answer, maybe.
I will. Thank you. I always forget to do that, and if I'm, I think I forgot yesterday as well. I'm Alexandra Corbu. Now I am basically what you call a YouTuber. So I have a production that is called Starea Planetei and Starea Nației, which makes videos about environmental issues and social issues. And I'm also starting my own channel in parallel. So basically I'm a video maker who is trying to communicate through videos about climate issues, and not only climate issues, all other sorts of things. And I collaborated in the last year with Anca when we organized VegFest together in Iași. So basically, I know a lot of people who are here from different situations. Thank you, Anca.
So now to get back to the question. So when the interest appeared to...
Yeah.
The first thing that comes in my mind is a story I told before. When I was a student, a master student, I received a scholarship and I was able to travel to Ghana for a research project on education for sustainability. And I wanted to bring some presents to the people there, and the recommendation was to take chocolate. So then I went to a fair trade store and I bought some chocolate produced in Ghana to give to my future teachers. And then I knew already that the second world producer of cocoa was Ghana after Ivory Coast, their neighboring country. And I was really intrigued to realize that, to understand then, that the same way that we don't know, maybe most of us don't know how a cocoa fruit, or the general public doesn't know how the cocoa fruit looks like. Most of the Ghanaian, I don't know how we call it in English, population is not able to taste chocolate. So then I started to, I was really intrigued, and I started to understand and to look and to read more about the globalization discontents and about the marriage of development, and to from this, let's say, negative emotions. And I tried. It was not easy to have rather a proactive than a reactive action, and to from here started this interest in education for sustainable or ethical consumption, socially but as well ecologically. And the role, again, this is not an easy question. The role, apart from the common one, the role of food in my life will be as well, I would like to say, a place of discovery and curiosity. Again, very intriguing. I tried several times to grow my own food. I have all the respect for the farmers. I was not able. I failed with the projects I implemented. But yes, I'm trying to discover more these other dimensions of food apart from the material, like the fuel, the material, cultural, political, the emotional and spiritual, and ones as well. Somehow, I hope I made myself understood.
Very well.
So I started growing food since 2010, making an urban garden in somewhere in Voluntari, a small city. It's a city near Bucharest. And since then I was continuing on growing food for myself or for the others in the context of urban gardening. And then I think I'm in the growing food movement since then, 2010, and dreaming to create a food system where permaculture can be applied, a permaculture food system globally, food system. I was just collecting information and learning, going from small scale, from how to grow your own seedlings, on how to repair tractor, and all the things that we have to do in farming and growing food. I was harvesting knowledge every season, not only knowledge in the basic, but also like working with yourself, networking and selling, and how to sell ethical products and everything. I was into this movement since then. And then I realized that actually what we managed to have enough knowledge in myself and in the team to really start the farm, start a food production system. And what food is for me now is I live at the farm. I eat my own food. I sell the veggies. I teach through the veggies. So actually the veggies is the context where it's most of everything. So yeah.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, I live and work in Hungary, but I didn't start there. I lived there for the last 12 years, but I grew up in the US, and I lived there for the first 22 years of my life. And when I was about 18, I started paying closer attention to the massively destructive impacts of the industrial food systems, which modern industrial food systems, which the mechanisms for carrying out this type of agriculture and this model were created in the US and exported and enforced on the rest of the world, this industrial agricultural model. And I started becoming really sensitive and sensitized to the absolutely destructive impacts on this, first from a health perspective, but of course from an environmental perspective as well. There's a great book called Stuffed and Starved by an author named Raj Patel, which explains some of the consequences of this industrialized food system, which is our modern reality, that we have crises of obesity, and we have a huge part of the global population starved of calories and nutrients. We even have some obese people who are physically carrying too much weight, but also starved from nutrients because they don't eat real food. The industrial food model has been great and incredibly creative at taking something that starts as real food and processing it and adding to it cheap things like oils and sugars and salts, and selling it at a very high value back to people, and making this type of food the easiest to access. And when I was a young person, I was not sleeping well and very worried by all of this and trying to decide what exactly to do about it. And this was the same time when I was becoming more conscious of the climate crisis, and I saw agriculture as one direct cause, but also potentially the only remedy we have to solving the climate crisis is through more sustainable agriculture. I didn't grow up in a farming family, but this is something I knew I wanted to learn more about. And I was able to have the chance to come to Europe to start studying. I didn't study in an agricultural program, but I studied an environmental sciences program, and I tried to focus all of my work in courses on understanding agricultural systems better. I'm very happy I had the chance to study in a university and spend a lot of time learning and writing and researching, but towards the end of my time in the university, I was so tired of talking about what should be done, and I wanted to find opportunities to actually participate in a more proactive and positive change. So as soon as I finished my degree, I found I took a lot of time in volunteering on a lot of farms in Hungary, and I found a farm which was farming in a really innovative way, prioritizing enhancing the land and thinking about the land which they were managing as their own ecosystem. So not just as a place where seeds grow in the ground and food comes out, but as a living ecosystem which the people managing this parcel of land had a great ability to not just use functionally, but improve. And so I decided to stay there. And since I got involved in farming, I'm most interested and constantly motivated by farms' abilities to serve as social spaces and living classrooms. And as much as I like farming work, the physical work, being outside throughout all the seasons, I love to see what's possible on farms as far as their ability to bring people together, to open them up to new ideas, to exchange ideas, to plan as citizens, as part of a community, how we can work together to improve our communities. And I think farms are the perfect social space for doing this, and that's why I'm very proud to have the ability to work on a farm and do all the work that's necessary to produce food, but also to test the limits of farms as functional social spaces and community centers. And that's why I truly believe in the transformative capacity of strong agricultural communities, and I'm happy to work in a team which is also prioritizing this as well. But that's my background in a nutshell.
So my background is not into agriculture at all, like Anka. But I grew up in the deep countryside of France. My grandparents on both sides were farmers. My uncle was a farmer, so he used to grow with this peasant spirit, common sense of, logic approach of things. Then I studied, work in cities, urban, and had some kids and realized that what we are building, what happened in the past 20 years mainly, is accelerating into the wrong direction. So I was very fortunate to be able to join Atelier Frontiere and to have the Bio&Co project to work with. Is the project with the most sense that I could think of to grow vegetable with low CO2, with people needing to get a job. I think 250 years ago, more than 50% of the GDP in Western European countries was agriculture related. And I think now is around 2%. So there's something definitely wrong in the whole system. And that's why I'm here today, to fight to get more agriculture into our lives.
Thank you. The next question actually relates to what you were saying now and to what Logan already started to talk about, and it concerns what exactly is so wrong about the current system. If we are to talk about where to start to change it, what do you think are some of the most damaging practices that we now have, and damaging not only to the climate but also to social inequity? And this is an open question, so you don't have to answer each one of you, but if you all want to contribute to something, I think it's hard to say where to start, but maybe, I don't know, the biggest things that need to change right now in the food system.
Nobody takes the mic. I can try to say my opinion is that we should make illegal the injustice and start to penalize the evil and subsidize the good. I think a big problem is that at least in the European system that I know better is that we have all these subsidies for practices that are not at all beneficial for our environment and not even socially. And on the other round, the ones that try to make changes at the grassroots level, we found ourselves very often on the verge of the legal activities. Ourselves, we did so many activities and practices maybe were illegal, because Damien, you were mentioning that you were the only legal workshop, or I don't know how you mentioned it, authorized workshop for the textile. Yeah. For instance, we did that for years as well without being authorized. So that means that if somebody will have checked on us, maybe we will have been fined. And it's the same with composting next to Quib, or I don't know. Yeah, I have several examples, but maybe somebody else wants to intervene.
So it's the context sets the solution. Let's say for Romania, because Romania still has small farmers and medium farmers. There are fewer and fewer, but I think they still exist, and they can still survive some years. Even the renewal of the generation is not happening. But I met some of the conventional agriculture farmers, and they are beautiful people. And this is an invitation for you people, and most of the here are consumers and are activists, is just don't throw stones into farmers, even if they are working with chemicals or not. They are bringing the food on the table. So one thing is to start not just blaming them, because they're holding they're taking the responsibility in a context where they are not very thriving. I mean, even if you're a medium farm, you're not earning a lot of money, so making a livelihood. So if they are that, it's their decision what kind of technique they use, but for the moment is they're bringing the food. And this invitation is one part of the solution that I have, is just first don't throw stones into that person, because if you're gonna throw stones, you're gonna have a reaction. And invite them at the table of dialogue, and understanding them from how you said, understanding them from their level, which is the farm level, because like I said it in previous talk, as a farmer you don't have time to innovate and integrate innovation unless you know it's a safe gives you a safe position. But integrating feedback and innovation and thinking about can happen only in the winter season. Well, I'm saying that because it's for farmers to innovate and change. It's something very difficult unless they are supported. So the question is how you support the transition. And one, like you said, it is just the one that are wanted to do good, give their money. One thing is give them money for practices, and the one that are doing bad, I wouldn't say that it's a good idea just to go into disadvantages for at least for the moment. What I think is just take one and give two. Just take one practice, but give money for other to practice that will help them. So that will be the rhythm.
I
And
think that what you're saying now is about the small farmers,
it
and this
also
applies to small farmers because for
it's
big
I'm
industries,
I'm a small farmer, and what, because the context, what in Romania still we still have small farmers.
yeah,
If we're not speaking about them, we're gonna speak in the future only. This discussion will be only about big farming, and we have no power and no agency to speak about it. For I don't have agency in that context.
do you want to add?
I just want to defend myself and to stress that I wasn't referring to the small farmers, but to the agro-industrial
Yeah,
practices.
yeah, I think it was clear for everyone, but it's best to clarify. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, if I remember, the question is, what is the biggest problem we face right now? If I tried to answer that simply, is that I would say that we've been ignoring and exploiting the gift which makes all life on planet Earth possible for thousands of years, which is soil. We luckily know more about soil now than we have in the history of human civilization, but we still don't know enough, and we need to keep learning more about how to maintain soil health, improve soil health. We need to start with soil and then, of course, build on from there. So I had one of the good things about taking a long night train journey to go from one place to another is that you have time to read, and I want to recommend a book. I'm not doing an advertisement for the author, but it's called Dirt, The Erosion of Civilizations. So the start of the destruction of soil health didn't only begin with the Industrial Revolution, but the fall of many of the major civilizations globally happened or was caused when they destroyed their soil resources. The unfortunate reality is that the dominant industrial agricultural model, which we're all, whether we're farmers or not, subservient towards, is exploitative, and it's basically mining resources from soil, trying to do its best to put back some of these resources with chemical fertilizers, but certainly not in the same way which nature would do it on its own naturally. And we need to prioritize maintaining soil health, enhancing soil health at the forefront of all agricultural policy, and support the food systems and farmers which are doing this. We have the capacity to combine indigenous knowledge and proven practices for maintaining soil health with modern knowledge that we have, with the contemporary knowledge of agroecology in practice. We need to help make this type of good soil and ecosystem management something viable for farmers, because the best practice farmers who are doing this are kind of doing this on their own responsibility. It's not necessarily helping them maintain financial stability at the moment, and we need to help make this more realistic for more farmers to be able to adopt good soil practices. And certainly, as was mentioned, we can't look at conventional farmers as enemies in this. I think there was a severe drought for the 2 previous years in Hungary, which of course had drastic consequences as far as yield and production, but one of the perhaps benefits of this is that we've seen in the last 2 years more conventional farmers seeing that, continually deeply tilling their soil, spraying it with chemicals, growing very basic crop rotations of monocultures. It simply is not going to work in the future. It doesn't allow for resiliency. So we need to think about this time that we're in now as an opportunity as well for spreading knowledge of good soil management and good on-farm practices. And we, as farmers, can work hard to share this knowledge amongst other farmers, but certainly individual consumers have a big role to play in this as well, as far as understanding their responsibility to find out what alternatives are out there in their own locality. One of the good things within the food movement is that it doesn't matter where you are, you have food systems alternatives relatively close to you. Whether you're in Romania or France or Germany, there are food system alternatives which we can support if we choose to, if we want to, and we should challenge ourselves to do this, because farmers can't do it alone and they need our help.
So then I will complement on what you are saying. Yes, there are food system alternatives that work, are demonstrated, bring added values ecologically and economically to the actors in place. Why we here and the other alternative systems have not been scaled is because we don't have public financing. Why don't we have public financing? Is because the doors are closed to us and they're open to others. They're open in Brussels, they're open at the parliament here by a few companies. So to answer your question, what can we do? In order to understand how it works, there are two movies that I recommend. One is called Goliath from France, showing what Monsanto did in France, the dirt that happened there. And the second one is Dark Waters. Similar story, but in the States with Dupont. So what can we do? Being activists, that's one thing. When we see things that are not normal, we need to act individually. And second, I think everybody agrees, just to be responsible when we go shopping, to shop less in these massive big companies that are feeding the system, and to buy more local to sustainable products.
In the last couple of years, we had all sorts of situations that put us in a place to understand that we need to change the food system, like wars, like pandemics, like energy crisis. Is there something that we can learn from them, or that we have already learned and put in place? I hope the latter, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll try to respond to that the best I can. It's a big question. We have a big false sense of security in food systems now. We can see the impacts of global conflict, as far as we might not see it in Europe, but certainly the invasion of Ukraine has caused food insecurity because of the increasing price of grain. We saw what happened during the pandemic that made it very clear that our supermarkets, which give us such a sense of comfort when we walk in and their shelves are full of everything, this is again an illusionary sense of security and supply, which can and will be interrupted, not in the long-term future, but likely more regularly in the short-term future. For decades, food policy was planned with the goal to achieve something which politicians came up with calling as called food security, which they measured by access to calories for number of population, for persons in a population. But we know that this idea of food security is a completely damaging and distractive idea. We need to start be thinking towards more food sovereignty, which is true resiliency in food systems and more control for people to be able to determine the type of food systems which they want to have access to. And we have a huge amount of work to do in changing policy, because European Union food policy, United States food policy is one that prioritizes increasing the value of agriculture as a market year after year. They don't prioritize individual health or even the needs or priorities or the well-being of farmers. As much as we can do, we need to constantly help encourage dramatic change in the productionist and productivist food policies. That's a huge amount of work. As much progress as we've made in increasing consciousness of agriculture and agricultural systems, we still haven't broke down this land-based payment barrier, which is the driver of conventional agriculture in the Western world. I hope we can make progress in that in the future. And there are alternatives which are, in spite of this, and in spite of being disadvantaged because of their small-scale holder status, which are finding ways to survive, finding ways to be creative with all of this pressures against them. And I can only hope in the future that that these type of models are replicated and more people gain access to them. But we have a huge job ahead of us of definitely changing food policy and supporting the existing alternatives that are out there now, because they're what might seem like thriving from the outside, if you were inside the mind of a farmer, you would know that their day-to-day life is very fragile, and these systems certainly need our help as well. So we have to keep this in mind.
So what I noticed that we have more and more clients saying that after COVID, they become more aware where the food is coming from, and they're looking for farmers. They felt scared about in the pandemic period that there will be scarcity of food, and they really needed a connection to a farmer. So I think people are looking into landscape to see who's farming, and the medium to big farming field crops. In Romania, at least, the discussion on groups and networking between farming regenerative practice is happening amazingly. Is more and more farmers are speaking about it, and more farmers are because of the latest droughts, they're looking into buying equipment to go into no-till and minimal till, which if you think about it in like 5-10 years ago, where like it's climate change, is no climate change, there is we can still make like 8 tons of something per hectare. Now it's definitely you cannot make it. So they are start investing into it. So something is moving, just because we had the feedback from nature. It's really happening. So I don't know if it's a good thing, but the feedback it's important. It's there, yeah.
And just to complement, I completely agree with your notes. In the meantime, okay, there is some kind of awareness. Farmers, the ones affected directly, they see that they need to act. They don't really have the solutions. But the policymakers in Romania, nothing has moved between pre-COVID and after COVID. Nothing has changed at all. At European level, there has been some thoughts, but the latest Horizon funds that are being discussed are pure techno-solutionist solutions, not going in the direction that we want, I believe. So locally, maybe there is some hope, but
Politically,
yeah.
it's missing. Yeah, thank you. That's what I was looking actually for. Another idea that came to mind was that in the beginning of the pandemic, we started to talk about zoonosis, because COVID is a zoonosis, and it's something that we now have research on and know that it's affected, or how to say, it's a disease that it's more likely to happen when we damage our environment, when we damage biodiversity. Also, it's a disease that's more likely to happen when we crawl animals together and keep them in horrible conditions. So at a certain moment in the beginning of the pandemic, we started to pay attention to that, but I think the attention flipped immediately. I mean, I'm not sure if it's just my impression, but I feel like the discussion has left the building very quickly regarding the conditions of animals and farms. Do you want to say something, Anka?
Yes, to complement on that, as Damian says, is that I think what we discovered during the pandemic, especially in this crisis, was that the urban population was the most vulnerable and fragile one, and always will find the rural ones more resilient, linked to your question, no? And again, to keep this in mind, and what we can learn is to what was already said, to support the local food systems, and to try to, I will remember as well the importance of food waste, and that we throw too much food, and it's if global food waste will be considered a country, will be the third one, no, after China and USA, yeah. But something else came to my mind. Yesterday was here a foraging workshop, and we were remember the participants how during times of crisis the people started to eat again wild edibles. I'm personally passionate about this type of food, so I think it can it's an opportunity for us, but I know it's very challenging to understand to what extent we can feed ourselves. Yeah. but rather from the permaculture lesson about this food forest concept and perennial food systems. Yeah.
I'm glad you talked about this because this was a question for the end, but I'm going to ask it now because it fits. What are some practices in agriculture that can support the growth and that can actually be applied by people who are now listening? Because this example that you gave is one of them, but I was thinking about community gardens or cooperatives, or I don't know, examples that you think people should know about and probably don't usually hear about it so often. Logan.
So that's a big question again, and if we're gonna use the framework of degrowth, which I like to use as someone interested in degrowth and someone who would call themselves a degrowth activist, it encourages us to take a real, honest stance about the impact of our life, the impact of our work, and other associated activities. And degrowth has two key words, in addition to a number of key narratives. One of them is reducing social metabolism, which means the amount of material and energy consumption required to sustain a population. And the strategy in doing this is strategic dematerialization, which they both sound, don't be intimidated by them, they both sound very complicated, but it's basically figuring out how to secure health and well-being for a population in a less material intense way, in a way which requires less energy and less raw materials. And I see farms as well-functioning farms as potentially perfect examples that can be spread to make achieving reduction in social metabolism and strategic dematerialization possible. And a farm in balance ideally should be its own stable ecosystem as far as the amount of energy consumed, the amount of nutrients utilized, removed, and returned to a piece of land. And this is also connecting to your previous question, which we didn't answer, which is, it came to mind, the place of animals on farms. It's a very complex question. Right now, by weight, 80% of mammals on this earth, or around 80%, are domesticated farm animals, 6% are humans. We have a huge imbalance in the amount of animals on farms, which are direct contributors to carbon emissions in the atmosphere, which degrade land, which can, if not harnessed and utilized properly, lead to erosion and soil degradation. But we need to rethink the place of animals in agriculture. But I'm saying all this not being against people having animals on the farm, because animals on a farm are a key aspect of closing the nutrient loop of production. So agricultural activity by nature is removing some nutrients from soil which need to be returned. Even on our farm, where we're intensively growing vegetables, we have to be very careful that the nutrients we remove when growing a carrot or a cabbage are replenished somehow. You can replenish them in a number of ways. Following a crop rotation is incredibly important in this. Growing green manures and cover crops, feeding soil microbiology by always having the soil covered, and reducing physical intervention or physical disturbance of soils is key. But compost is a magical material for maintaining a soil balance, and ruminant animals on a farm are a perfect way to have concentrated production of potentially compostable material. But we have to it's a long road that we have in stopping of thinking of animals in the farm landscape as profit-generating commodities, and rather just nutrient balance maintainers. But we need to work towards this as well within all of the different transitional agricultural movements. We have to keep questioning the place, the amount, and the usage and the integration of animals at all scales. And we have a big challenge to face, because especially as China and some other countries in the Far East are developing, and a new class of people are gaining wealth. They're starting to adopt Western dietary habits, which are rich in animal products and dairy products, and they're also at the same time adopting the factory farming techniques of the Western world and copying these techniques to make concentrated animal feedlots. And this is a big challenge that we have going forward in completely rethinking the place of animals on farms, but doing this sensitively and not being completely anti. So we could be advocating for a vegan or plant-based dietary lifestyle, but at the same time, understanding the role that animals have in a farm landscape, and we need to be conscious of this as well.
So if the question the question is what can we do individually to go through in the direction of degrowth, I would say like 5 actions for everybody to start with. The first one is to compost at home in the apartment. It's possible. It's the main action that is really easy. So start composting. Second, cook. Let's not buy any more processed food. Third, once we cook, let's look at where the products we buy come from. Here in Romania, I don't know about Hungary, but the garlic comes from China, and the tomatoes come from South Spain, which is ridiculous. So let's look at the country it comes from. And once we start cooking with local products, let's grow stuff. So I can understand me too is difficult, but at least aromats, parsley, basil, radish, we cannot miss that. So we need small space. We can all do that at home, and it's got an impact on our consumption and on all this flow of products going throughout Europe that we can do at home. And then to go to, I don't know, tomatoes, potatoes, and whatever. But aromats, I think, is an easy one.
Thank you. It's nice that we now have. I wished I would have took a note on what you said.
I have something to say about that also, because we as farmers were struggling on having predictability on sales, which this gives us unpredictability on planning how much we grow. And then this fluctuation is taking out of the safe zone, and most of the time in the season we're not playing safe. Because we don't have, maybe sometimes we don't have enough customers, or we don't have enough cash flow to invest in front of the season. So small farmers, they cannot go to, I mean, we don't go to bank to take the money in front to go to the invest. It's a high risk. So we practice the community support agriculture model. We have a subscription model. We also Bioco Farm, which it's a success story, and it's a solidarity model for all the actor involving customers and farmers. So one invitation is look for CSA model, community support agriculture model, and support the farmer, because that's, if we have safety, we can produce the best quality food you ever dreamed about it. If we don't have safety, then we're gonna struggle and maybe we're gonna quit.
Yeah, the next question was actually regarding how do you start an organic farm, where if you have, I don't know, some skills that you really need, or toolkit that you could talk about for the audience. If there's someone in the audience who wants to start an organic farm, where should they start? I don't know, but
there is someone in the audience who wants to be a farmer.
No.
You want to be a farmer? Okay, we can speak after about it.
Okay, it's there are too many things to say about it.
No, actually, we can also have our opinion. We call it, you need a lot of matrix point knowledge in order to become a farmer, because if you're not doing every task, if you're not doing at maximum capacity, and you have 200 tasks per that day, and if you're not efficient on each task, then you're gonna do 20 tasks, and then the radish will be full of weeds, and then the radish will be not harvested in time, and then the radish will gonna become waste. Just saying about the radish and everything. So you have to develop your skills until you unconsciously you're like a magician, and you're very fast. I'm not gonna. I don't want to scare you, people, but this.
But I think it's important.
The speed. We say people when they're coming at the farm, the speed of moving at the farm is 8 kilometers per hour. You cannot walk at the farm with 5 kilometers per hour. You're running at the farm. I'm not gonna wait for you because I have to go there at the end of the farm. So it's skills. You have to learn skills, and you have to be there in the farm. You cannot learn, and you cannot go out of the matrix out of normal job and become a farmer next year. You have to go somewhere to take an apprenticeship. That's how you do it. And in Romania there are some farms, so go to a farm, work for some months, and then you're gonna build your knowledge. And also at the end, it's gonna be hard also surviving there. I mean, if you go in June, first month is June, you're gonna die in the first week, because we stay in the greenhouse at 40 degrees, the full day. Huh? Yeah, it's a free sauna workshop.
Yeah, I have an experience last summer. I went to a colleague who has a greenhouse, and I was, how are people doing this? I was asking myself. I mean, it's really...
You just you build yourself resilience. You build yourself resilience. So how you start a farm is you need knowledge, you need land, and then you need money for infrastructure, and then you need customers. And because it's not production, it's not about production, it's about selling. A farm is selling veggies, is not production, it's not producing veggies, for example. Because if you produce it for your own house. But if you want to sell it, then it's a different kind of business. It's another business. You have to think about it. And most of our problem as farmers is selling. It's not. I'm sure we both are very good at producing veggies. We're not very good at selling veggies.
Thank you.
Just to complement on a little bit of advertising, on Saturday, October the 7th, at 10 in the morning, we do a harvesting day. So open doors in our farms for the ones who want to come and see and observe what we do, and then we've got the team there to explain the hurdles that we fight every day.
Maybe I'm not the best to give advices, but I do grow some food. Or I'm lucky enough to eat from some perennials. I had tens of rucola salads and kale this summer, and as well at Quib we have a small garden with 20 perennials that survive. I agree with what Ionuț said. We need knowledge and we need support. This is what we did. We always ask for support from the experts. But a slogan from the Zero Waste movement came into my mind, that it's better to have millions of people doing urban agriculture imperfectly than to have a few doing it very good. So I think, again, it's very important, again, for what we can do. I think everyone can grow partially some food in the city, and that we need to do that, and to bring as well back the dirt in the urban areas to grow the respect for the food, and
or to support those who do it already by subscription.
Definitely, because we can't feed ourselves. Yeah, definitely. But apart from this, I think.
Yeah.
Just to comment on getting started, I don't want to make it sound like becoming or establishing your own farm is something super intimidating or we should be afraid of it. It definitely is hard, but I recommend this to anyone, which is that learn on an already functioning farm operation for at least 5 years before you start spending your own money, to learn from your own mistakes with your own money, because it's much more functional to take the time to learn on from other functioning farms before you take that risk of your own investment. And there are a lot of decisions to be made. Do you want a farm which is all the work can be done basically in a small team working with hand tools? Are you interested in mechanization? What type of climate do you want to be working in? What type of soil do you want to be working in? How far or how close do you want to be to a market? Who is your market? What type of market do you want to be serving. You have some hard decisions to make a functioning business. Farms are functioning businesses at the end of the day, as much as they are about the work in the garden. You need to challenge yourself and see if you enjoy being outside for 10 to 12 hours or more a day. Sometimes from the outside looking in, that might sound very nice, but when you're out for 10 hours a day in December or January, or as was mentioned, in the heat of the summer, you might not think it seems so attractive, but you shouldn't be afraid of this. And farming is not something you get into to become rich. You get into it because you love the work and you feel it's fulfilling. And the best part of working on a farm is that you're working on something where you see the tangible results of your work every day in front of you. The results of your work are not far away from you. They're not imaginary. They're not stuck in the cloud somewhere. They're right in front of you, and it's hard to find work like that. And not all of us have to become farmers to be able to make a difference. We were just talking in the previous session of all of the ways that you could play a role in a community food system. And it's certainly the truth that most farmers have learned enough about production to be able to be good fruit or vegetable or grain producers. The toughest challenge for us is answering the question of what the hell do we do once we harvest the product from the ground. That's what farmers usually need support in doing. We need access to space. We need fair access to space, which doesn't add a cost to what we're doing. So someone living in a city who knows of a cafe or knows of a community space or knows of a social space which might want to serve as a food distribution point, that's also something really helpful that you can do to help link open and willing spaces in cities, in the countryside, to active farmers trying to manage a community food system. Farmers need help in communication. Farmers need help in business planning. Farmers need help in marketing their products. We also should and can learn from the cutthroat business world what type of ideas and techniques we can subvert and use them for good. And we need to help farmers develop these skills, or perhaps lend our time passing on our skills in a way that could be used in community food systems. So you could play a key role in a food system without being a farmer yourself, and it's just as crucial as the working in the garden as well. So we should keep that in mind.
Thank you. At a certain moment, Logan, you started talking about how important it is to challenge people's dietary patterns as well. And this is a question that is actually more for Anka, I think, because you have more experience with working with community in this regard, because you have a bistro in Yash. And I would like to tell us a little bit about what are some of the main challenges that you have faced while challenging people's dietary patterns, and if there's, I don't know, something you can tell people who want to do the same to start to have in mind.
I will see what if I can say something new. So the challenges are the I will say the social and the cultural norms, the traditions we have, the very big force of marketing and publicity, advertising, that it's very hard for us to compete with in order to make the right awareness. I sometimes speak about the ecology of mind, and that the peace and clarity of our mind is the most important resource that we have. This is a quote from an author that influenced me. I don't know if you know Adbusters. I totally recommend it. It's a journal published in Vancouver, Canada, the so-called the Journal of the Mental Movement. And I just realized that as well in France, where is the so-called how do you say the birthplace of degrowth, let's say. In Europe, they have this similar magazine, Casseur de Pub, which means Adbusters as well, that really published this Décroissance journal. Sorry for the big parenthesis, but I go back to this ecology of mind. Um, and I think it's very important. How we can challenge it is how Irina does it here through this event to reappropriate spaces, public spaces, and to try to bring this, make these discussions and more and more common. But we see that we are still very marginal. I don't know. I don't know. There is not an easy solution. It's. I'm sorry that I can't be more positive, but we are still here and we do our best. I don't know.
Thank you. Well, I think you've answered. For me, it's a very good answer because we don't have a. It's clear that we don't have a. I don't know, a recipe to change people's minds. But what we can do is create events, support. I don't know, businesses that do what we think should be supported. And this being said, I think we should now start the questions from the audience.
Thank you for your speeches and the advice on starting farming. Actually, you said we need land, but I've seen in Canada, I think, someone made some greenhouses, especially made for top buildings, and somehow they didn't manage to sell a lot of them, so they just started renting top of the buildings, and they produced food on those buildings. Or if you cannot pay for the this is idea that we can implement here. You can actually buy that but pay it yearly or with products, and you just have to work there because I mean yeah, it's a lot hotter in greenhouses in the summer, but if it's made correctly, I mean, I think it should be made so it's a lot cooler in the summer days. And from what I've discussed with the people that sell these greenhouses, they were saying that a lot of farmers are not really interested in investing the money in the expensive greenhouses and automated ones, because they were just spending the money, or they somehow don't have this modern thinking. I think we all, I'm not throwing with stones like you said in the farmers, but somehow I think the situation in Romania it's explicable not necessarily by the government, maybe part of it, but also the situation. We have a lot more land per citizen than other countries, and somehow like Ukraine, we're just producing grain, and it's hard to produce grain with without chemicals. So I don't know. My question would be, how if we produce legumes and this in this ecological way, how do you sell it? How do you manage to implement the logistic part where you have to store it? Then um, if we take the frozen food, people need to invest in these technologies. I mean, of course, we need subsidies to do that. But what would be the next steps? I mean, we have to make a larger cooperatives, because I mean, I know the social aspect and the spiritual one. People need to be together. Food is like breeding. We manage to become social because that's how we survive, like wolf in packs. And but in the modern context, I think we need a lot technology, technologies
So
to store
basically,
food.
sorry to interrupt you. The question is for the others. How
The
do they?
question is, do you think we need to actually be more technologized? Because I mean, I actually grew on the countryside, so I don't really need to be on a farm. I've been for years now working, so I know how it is, and we need an upgrade.
I tried to start answering that point, but you brought up a lot of things, so I'll go through a few. The question of technology on the farm is an important one, and a farm which is attempting to incorporate agroecological inspired practices, it doesn't mean that it's ignorant of technological advances. We need better monitoring. We would like to know more about the moisture content of our soil in all the different parts of the farm. We want to know exactly when to water. We would like to have automatic irrigation because it's a way to conserve water resources. We would like to be able to know exactly when to open our polytunnels and close them based on the ideal conditions, moisture, temperature for the crop that we have in them at that time. That is completely compatible with agroecological approaches, knowing more about your farm ecosystem and using science to help with this. Even in the type of farming which we're involved in, which is the smaller scale biointensive market gardening, there are tools and technological development in appropriate tools which are super helpful for us in reducing work. So our biggest challenge is that the labor on our farm is the most expensive part of our operation. So we have a constant challenge to work efficiently, to plan efficiently, and tools that help us do this are crucial. And luckily, there's been enough of a movement of designing specific hand tools which are not specifically invasive and destructive so getting beyond the tractor, but still thinking about research and tools which are appropriate tools for farms which are thinking about managing soil properly. And we need more research in this. And you did mention something about greenhouses, rooftop greenhouses, and I could connect this to the growing interest in urban gardening. I think it's a super positive thing that more people living in cities are taking an interest in growing their own food. There are some entrepreneurs who are thinking about the urban environment and how to produce more food for an urban population in an urban environment. I think there are some dangers in this as well, especially when we get into something like hydroponics, or when we get into producing food in soil which is brought into a location and continuously needed to be enhanced either chemically or through resources coming from somewhere else. Because in a hydroponic system, for plants to grow, you still need to add some sort of nutrients to a water system, unless it's a perfectly designed closed system with fish, but that's likely that they're importing resources from somewhere else. So there's a big question on where are these nutrients coming from. In the most common cases, in what we see being advertised as the solution for feeding cities in these highly advanced hydroponic systems, it's the same chemical fertilizers which they're using in conventional agriculture. They're just putting in water and growing salad greens in a box in the city somewhere. And I don't see this as a positive solution. Also, I do have a big question of what exactly is going to happen in the countryside in Europe in the future. Are we just abandoning the countryside, forgetting the great heritage and legacy and cultural traditions which were bred from strong agricultural populations? Are we just going to have a constellation of cities and nothing in between? I hope not, and that's why I believe that focusing on agriculture in the soil, in the rural areas of Europe, I hope it maintains the main focus, and that these urban gardening initiatives and rooftop gardening initiatives don't become distractive. I worry a bit in the last 10 years, especially in European Union research, urban gardening has received a huge amount of attention and resources. But if we're talking about changing agricultural systems, we need to make sure that the appropriate amount of resources are focused where the majority of agriculture happens, which is outside of cities and in the countryside. And Yeah, we need. I like to put the emphasis on appropriate technology, and what the main difference is in appropriate technology compared to just technological development for the sake of new technology is we need to be very honest about the social and environmental impacts of each technological development. And what we really strive for on our farm is each time we implement a new technology, we really try to understand its impacts on our process, but its environmental footprint as well. And we have polytunnels because the profitability of polytunnels subsidizes the less profitable work which happens in the open environment. But of course, we don't imagine a future covering our 3 hectares all with polytunnels, even though from a financial perspective, it probably would be the most sensible business choice. But we have to weigh this bad environmental consequence, which is covering an area with a plastic polyethylene cover, but we justify it because the rest of the operation wouldn't work, where we're really working hard to improve the soil in the open air in the exterior if we didn't have the polytunnels, which we can grow in all year round. But each farm, each setting, this is a difficult balance and a challenge which farmers take on to try to find this balance.
So I apologize in advance because I'm going to play devil's advocate a bit. But hopefully my question will help you refine some ideas, and it ties very well into the issue of emptying the countryside and the growing cities. So is there a limit for an urban population so to feed a city of like 3 million, let's say, like Bucharest? How local and how far from conventional methods, which are more productive than sustainable methods, unfortunately, can you go and still have resources to feed such a growing and localized population locally, keeping in mind that around the city there are other competing interests like industries and urban sprawl?
So Bucharest is feeded most for at least with vegetables from Balen Sârb, which is a village, from a village near another village from Giurgiu, I don't know the name, and another village from Dolj or something. So there are 3 villages that are feeding Bucharest now.
What percentage of the population?
What is mostly? Because if you go into supermarkets, even now in season, I can find tomatoes from Turkey.
Yeah, but this is only 3 villages from 3 counties that are, my opinion is that are feeding at least 50. They're covering at least half of the vegetable in Bucharest. So
Source?
just
I'm sorry. I just asked for a source on that data. Sorry.
just go in the villages and speak with them, and also then correlate it with the supermarkets and also the markets. At least in the season, most of the vegetable are from Romania, at least in the season. But the season can be extended very well for example, roots, celery, leek, beets, carrots. Most of them are local until January. And then from January, they start importing from Germany and Poland until the next season appears. But we have the capacity to feed the cities, but then we need a very good logistics and to assure that they don't have waste, because they can produce. They are still in the villages. They are still also people our age, which is we're younger than most of the other countries. There's still a lot of people that they want to become farmers. I mean, they want to preserve the parents' greenhouses mostly. So in Belen, they give us a wedding. We don't give money as a gift as a wedding. We here in Romania, at the wedding we give money. They don't give money, they give greenhouses. They give you 1,000 square meters greenhouses when you get married. There's still people are doing it. And if you go to Belen or in Videle somewhere, you can see that it's a lot of food there, man. It's a lot of food. most of them is in the market. In supermarket, they're trying now to reach the supermarket, but it's complicated with the logistic and actually logistic.
So regarding baleine and this area, there is a very good documentary that I recommend called Kartov Varza Demon. If you haven't seen it, it's funny, sad, and indeed you can see how much pesticide we've got in our plate in Bucharest, with people really poor, struggling in these little villages. In Paris, there was a study a few years ago showing that if we colonize the entire city with the empty spaces to put some vegetables, we would feed 6% of the Parisian population, which I guess can apply to most big cities. Talking about degrowth in general, probably the problem is the city. Are we made to be 3 million in one space? Probably not.
That's where he was headed on, basically, because we know that the urban population is expected to double its size by 2050, I believe. So, yeah.
I want to comment about your question. It's a great question and should be asked. It's certainly impacted by what we're eating as well. We've gotten used to a highly processed diet, which is largely reliant on grains, rice, maize, corn. We've stopped subsisting largely on vegetables. We definitely need to be to think about self-sufficiency and localizing production. We need a wider scale adoption of seasonal vegetable consumption. And this also connects to your question. Some of the crops which would be potentially the most impactful to incorporate into crop rotations to regenerate soil are crops which have more difficulties in processing and have more difficulties in finding a market. So that's another challenge that an arable scale farmer takes on when they want to incorporate legumes into their rotation is, can they sift them? Can they store them with the technology they have, or does their shift to go more soil regenerating crop rotation, does it require an additional infrastructural investment? That's a challenging one. But we definitely need to diversify our diets and support programs which are encouraging people to reconnect with seasonal food, to reconnect with rarer varieties, to eat more legumes as a source of protein as opposed to just traditional grains or animal products. There's been a lot of promising projects in trying to reintroduce more regional and ancient grains into arable farms, but this also requires a system of mills and bakers who knows how to deal with these different types of grains, so not just the traditional wheat varieties, but like einkorn or grains which have a better which are less impactful on the soil and have a much better biodiversity profile when growing. This is a big challenge, but even in I know of these projects existing in Baker Miller grower cooperatives, even in Hungary, which I would say is not the most advanced in developing these new type of cooperations. So I can only hope that there's more of these in the future, and that as much as the on-farm practice change, the dietary consumption habits need to change as well. And then we can get to a part about talking about the productivity possibilities for feeding big industrial locations. But I can also speak from our example. So from one hectare of soil in Hungary, which Hungary still, even after decades of soil exploitation, still has pretty good soil. Romania still has pretty good soil. We can provide the vegetables, seasonal vegetables, for at least 1,000 persons. And there's multiple hundred thousands of hectares of good soil in Hungary.
1,000 a full year?
Yeah, if I'm talking about seasonal vegetables. So we don't produce grains, we're not producing cheese or meat products, but the vegetables.
Can you say that number? So we're producing, for 1 hectare, we're delivering 100 boxes each week for 1 family. So
It's a rough estimate, but it's a pretty accurate one. Yeah. So if we're talking about the seasonal vegetable consumption and what is our capacity based on our 1 hectare of land, I would estimate it at being able to feed 1,000 persons from 1 hectare.
I think it also comes back to the structure of the diet and how much is reliance of on seasonal vegetables as a percentage of total calories versus grains and
Yeah.
everything else.
Okay. So I actually have 3 questions, but I'm going to try to make it not very complicated. So the first one stems from what Alexandra asked in the beginning, what is wrong with the current system? And I noticed, at least in my impression, that people were tiptoeing around what I think is the most obvious for me as an anti-speciesist, and that's the animal industry, which is, of course, a producer of extreme suffering and violence and environmental degradation and climate change. And it's all connected, so you cannot have a big animal industry for meat producing. It's connected to the egg and the milk industry, so we actually really need to make that all of it stop, I think. And besides just looking at from this point of view, I think a historical point of view might help us. So just making a very superficial flash history of how we got there here. So we had hunter-gatherers, and then we had agricultural settlements. Then we had these big wars and conquests that were made possible by having big hoards and meat that could be stored and taken along in war journeys, which kind of, in a way, led to colonialism, which was made possible because of cattle ranching and big plantations. So what we have is the exploitation of land that is related to the exploitation of animals, which is related to the exploitation of people, specifically in slavery, but also right now in what we have very precarious, like migrant labor that is related to the whole of agricultural industry. So I think the first question is, how do we actually tackle this ideologically in our, not just, so also in your particular practices, how do you think of these things together, right? How do you tackle the exploitation of animals and the exploitation of human labor, and the understanding that all of these led to this growth of civilization that is very unequal? This is the first question. The second question is partly what I think is a bit related. It's the question of cooperatives and collectives, and the question of grounding in specifically in Romania, right? We had in in socialist times a collectivization of agriculture. So how do we relate here in this space right now to collective practices of agriculture? Because a lot of your answers were individual and small scale, but again, how much can we really feed a population that is growing of so many people? And let us not forget that all of these many people, there are also other animals, right? So, okay, this is made invisible, but the population of companion animals is real and also, and it's also existing, and it's part of the food system in which we live. Many of the companion animals live from the wastes of the industrial animal agriculture, right? So how do we feed all of these people from small-scale agriculture? I don't know. So my question goes back to the collectivization. How do we think this from here where we are? And I'm also coming with this. I was just thinking. I was remembering the example of Marinaleda. It's a village in Spain. It's a socialist village that, I don't know if you heard the story. They struggled a lot and won part of the land that was belonging to the nobility in that part of Spain. And what they did was switch the production of land. The land was used for some sort of monoculture plantation of grain that used a lot of machinery and little labor, so it could not pay people. They switched the production of land to be labor intensive so that they could get paid, so that they could live from what they produced on the land. So this it's part of what I think can be an answer to actually my question. And my third question is just what can we do collectively, because one of the questions that Alexandra asked was what can we do individually, and I think some of the answers, okay, we can do individually these really small things, but of course they are not enough. And many of you mentioned eating locally, but in many statistics, eating locally, being vegan is much more emission reducing than eating locally, which I do not think was stressed enough in this discussion. So again, also being vegan, of course, is again not enough. This is why I'm asking this question: what can we do collectively? So these are my 3 questions. Thank you.
I'm not going to answer the three questions. Just one of them. What you mentioned is that we are more and more, and how do we tackle this issue? This is what the people I talked to from Bayer Monsanto were using as an argument, and I would rule out this argument completely because we are not more and more in Romania, not that much more and more in Europe. And there is again a documentary today I quote a lot called Local Solutions for Global Disorder from Colin Serrault in France. Solutions are local. So I wouldn't start the premises of finding a solution for the entire planet. Let's first find a solution for ourselves and then show what is possible, and then maybe people are going to copy for their own areas.
So I think it's very good addition to our discussion that we have a anti-speciesist voice or narrative coming into the discussion, because it's something I spend a lot of time thinking about, especially when we're talking about the role of animals on the farm. And in the previous discussion I went into this because when we're starting to talk about soil regeneration at a larger scale, at an arable farm scale, one of the key elements of the movement now is the reintegration of animals into farm landscapes where a nutrient imbalance was created and for some decades fulfilled in a not complete way by the application of chemicals to soils. And we know the consequences of this, of the degradation of soils. So one of the main points which are trying to emphasize is the replacement of nutrients in soils through the planned and controlled grazing of animals, of ruminant animals on soils. And I think we really need to keep a focus on the carrying capacity of a certain farmland, because just having rotational grazing of animals could still be have a huge environment. It has an inherent huge environmental impact because of the methane byproduct of the animals, the amount of feed they need, the question of whether you're supplementing their feed throughout the year. And I understand from very committed vegan perspective or an anti-species perspective that this could be considered as an exploitation of animals, the act of animal husbandry and rotating animals and kind of using them as the nutrient supplements on the farm. But from the perspective of agricultural activity, if you're repeatedly harvesting crops, you have a tough decision to make of how you're going to return these nutrients to the soil.
So you mean manure? You need animal manure.
That's what I was getting to. If you don't use animal manure, which is one of the ways to do it quite efficiently, you have to be pretty well versed in composting with plant-based materials, and you likely need a forest next to where you're farming.
You don't need to kill animals to have them graze on your
Yeah, I'm not. So we're in complete agreement here. Animals should be thought of as colleagues on a farm and treated with the same respect as the people working on the farm, and not as exploitable commodities or farm tools. So that's at least the farm where I'm working on. We're thinking of our animals as true team members which play a crucial function in supporting the farm life system, which we're a part of and which we're trying to manage. We're not the we're not the rulers of this kingdom. We're working in symbiosis with the gift that we have, which is the soil that we have, and who inhabits it. So we inhabit it as people, but the animals on our farm are also active members of this community with thoughts, with a conscience, which we need to make sure are in good emotional health, physical health as well. But the steps for, it's already a step for thinking of arable farmers to reintegrate animals to structures without imbalance. We need to keep working going forward so that people are thinking about, okay, so I have a nutrient imbalance, now I just cover it by the inclusion of animals and everything's taken care of. No, we need to make sure that the knowledge keeps going forward, and the understanding of the right carrying capacity, the right amount of animals on a farm landscape is sufficient or not too much. And also, yes, getting to the point where animals are not idealized as high profit commodities, but actual parts of the farm infrastructure would be the best result of this. But we have a lot of work to go in that direction.
I just shortly, I want to add that what you're saying makes me think of farm sanctuaries. I work with farmed animal sanctuaries, and they usually struggle a lot to raise money for buying hay and food for the animals. So basically, a network with farmers that would let the animals graze for free on pastures. That would, I think, be a thing that is totally doable, and that I think we should be. Whoever is capable of doing such a thing should start thinking of making such networks.
Just one concrete example for Bio & Co. I don't know if it's a perfect system, but at least we're fortunate to have a pony farm next to us with activities with kids, and then we get the manure from the pony farm. But again, is it perfect? I'm not sure. It's better than harming animals for this.
I'm sure most of us here will say that it's not perfect, no, but I will try to answer as well. I wanted to mention, in fact, a couple of times about the animal industry. I just didn't mention, I just didn't manage, but I will go back to the food waste. It might look superficial, but let me know, bear with me a bit to tell you that when the first time when I went with our van to collect some food waste from only from 2 shops to supermarkets from Yash, I realized that nobody should have food problems. I mean, problems feeding her or himself in my city. And we collect only vegetarian products because we are a vegetarian restaurant. So this was clear since the beginning that we collect only vegetables. But once they made a mistake, and they gave us meat products as well, and I realized what is the waste linked as well with the animal products, and it's really sad. And maybe I'm wrong, but I stressed it several times that it's not okay to eat animals, but it's even worse to throw them away. So again, I think we can work. Here, I don't know if collectively there is a system of food banks in Romania. Maybe they can work better somehow together as well for feeding the animals in the sanctuary. It shouldn't be so difficult to feed the animals. I know already the bear sanctuary next to Zărnești, they use a lot of food waste from the supermarkets. They have some collaboration in this sense. And then I wanted to give another example, not linked with speciesisms or animal rights, but with what we can do collectively. I'm involved in a project called Sustainable Schools. We try to develop a tag with some other entities in Romania. So I'm from Iași, but the project was initiated by a local, an organization based here in Bucharest, and we managed to bring in our consortium Cami, that maybe she left, but Cami from Clujul Sustenabil and from the Food Waste Combat, and another organization in Timișoara, Cries. And among other things, for other aspects or dimensions of the practical activities that we propose, one will be this, to change the food diet as well, to bring more beans in the public canteens. And as well, Emil is not here anymore either, but in most of the schools we try to teach children about urban gardening, though. Again, not for the naive idea that we can feed or we should feed the urban population with what we produce locally, but I think that it's very important to teach children and adults about the miracle of seeds in order to be able to respect better our food, to throw it less, and to respect as well the farmers and to pay better the farmers.
The reality, my reality from my village is that, like I said, we have like 20 cows now in the village, which we for the manure we are fighting with other farmer. We are like who's taking the manure now, and there are other. and what we're thinking that we need to take a cow for the next season to assure part of the manure to have it on the farm, and also we'll probably gonna need some pigs to create not to reduce the waste. We have some in the at least in the summer we have a lot of waste on zucchini, for example, and other veggies that are not good for eating. That's dimension on the waste, and but the target is not to grow the pig. The target is to reduce the waste. I mean, it's not we're not gonna start having 20 pigs now because just we realize that the pigs are cash crop. So it's it, and we had at the farm we had a strong reaction. Like we thinking this now, like in the past, the last year we were like we definitely don't want any kind of animal in the farm to raise it, and we realized that we need chickens for fertilization and also for weed management. There will be our crew for take the weed management and fertilization. Not many. We designed like around 50 to 75 for our scale, and probably gonna need one cow and one pig. But this is just to serve our operation of growing vegetable.
I have a question. What do you eat when you are not home? Because when you are home, you eat your own food.
Junk food sometimes. I'm not going into radical. I'm not. I'm not an extremist, and I'm not radical about it.
I wanted to give him the mic.
That was,
What you said.
I think.
I can answer.
I can tell you, I'm not at home here, so I can tell you what I ate today and yesterday, if I remember. Today I ate some grapes and the banana, and I ate here, yeah, and yesterday again. But the day before yesterday, yeah, I think I'm privileged enough to be able to eat at restaurants and to check the restaurants if I'm in an urban area. Otherwise, I try to take some ingredients with me on the way. And I'm not radical here either. I do some, but I never go to. I boycott some places. Yes, I want.
I have my stash of veggies in my car. Now, are they copy and tomatoes?
I think the question is more in general about degrowth. How far should we go? And nobody's perfect. When working on some workshops about the CO2 emission that each one of us should consume in order to attain the COP21 target in 2050, shall we include the fact that we breathe and we do emit CO2? So let's all try to do our best, and that's already a lot, I think.
Yeah, no. So when I'm on the farm or close to the farm, in a normal week, I'm probably eating like literally 10 kilos of leafy greens, different types, chard, spinach, cabbage.
Just a little bit to interrupt you. So Anka will have to leave now because she has to plane the train. So thank you, Anka, for being here with us and for everything that you. And
So we can go on.
yeah. Sorry, she
Um,
really had to leave.
But it's certainly, when I travel, I'm like thrown back into the world of the unconscious consumer because I don't always know what is available, and that's a challenge too. And I feel different when I get off this normal routine because I'm very physically active, and if I'm surviving mostly from plants, I want to eat the ones that I know are high nutrient and high energy and return, what my body consumes in a normal day, and that's a challenge sometimes. And I would say I'm 80% vegetables from the farm and like 20% falafel sandwiches when I travel, because of course, I like to sometimes go to a restaurant as well, and it's you can't always expect to find a restaurant meeting your consciousness levels, but no one's perfect, and it's not a quest to be perfect either.
Just one question.
Short.
Short one, yeah.
Somehow this seems to be pleonasm like food and degrowth, because food is about growing plants and stuff, and then growing food and degrowing doesn't seem to be. Do you think farming has something to do with food surplus? Because I mean, you said it's like you're being a magician, and you were saying something about the state uh, keeping food aside per person, but they don't say nothing about the quality, just calories. So you have to be. Do you think you have to be a magician to make surplus? Because somehow to keep it for the next years. I don't know.
So what I meant by magician is to know and have control, and to be able to respect the plan. And for us, is starting going well, respecting the plan. But this is by season. By season, we try to. So we integrated crops that are for storage this winter, and we're gonna have a lot of food for the winter, not only leaves. And it's working, and we don't have in extraordinary storage spaces. We're gonna improvise, and it's like old-fashioned way with store it in sand. Not we don't have a storage room, but it's old-fashioned way. Still, it's working for the whole clients until March. So the magician part is just act according to plan and do a good plan just for us. And I know it's like we're speaking. I'm speaking. I know I'm speaking a lot about planning, but this is what we do actually. The most of the things that we do is planning, and then when we go out, we stay me and Alex, we're staying at least 6 hours per week planning, at least 6 hours, and then we go out and do, and act. But without planning, it's gonna be chaos. So we look at each crop what to do. We go then scan each crop, and then look at the Excel, and then look at AutoCAD to see what have to done next, and then we order, and then we have to order seeds per hour to 2-3 weeks before making the seedlings, and so we have to act according to plan, and then you have to know exactly what to plan, each details, and it's not that complicated actually after 2-3 seasons. When you have the database of actions, because you know what to do each year mostly, then can be easy. Can be easy.
I think we mentioned degrowth a few times, but perhaps we didn't emphasize its connection and relevance in agricultural systems. Food policy, no matter where you are in whatever country you're in Europe, in North America, in other parts of the world, it's prioritizing first and foremost the increase in the value of agriculture as a sector, and that's a key problem. And that's something that degrowth is very good at criticizing. Why are we prioritizing economic growth as a policy and as a strategy for society when it's only good for a very select amount of people? So until food policy fundamentally changes from prioritizing the value country to country of agriculture as a sector, and it starts going into thinking about nutrition, thinking about the rights of farmers, thinking about the percentage of a profit kept for farmers, it's going to be problematic. So this is what we need to be working towards. But that's a global problem within the agricultural sector, that it's not the goal to increase well-being, it's not the goal to increase public nutrition, it's not the main goal to preserve the environment. The main goal in agricultural policy is a competition at a country-to-country, continent-to-continent level to continually increase the value of agricultural products. And we simply need to change this. And that's why you mentioned something about the potential incompatibility of something like the word degrowth and agriculture, which is based on growing and thriving and producing. But it's an important usage of the word of degrowth as a phrase, that it continually challenges this prioritized economic growth as a societal goal, and this is something that we need to disrupt and change. And yeah, I think well-functioning agricultural systems and agricultural communities inspired by agroecology have this embedded within them, whether they consider themselves degrowthers or not. It's not important whether they've adopted the phrase or not. It's embedded in their activities.
And just about this word degrowth and pleonasm with growing vegetables or crops. Personally, I question the word degrowth completely. I know there were some debates, but I think we should change this word, because what we want is growth. Growth of social bounds, growth of healthy vegetables, growth of health in society, growth of biodiversity. So let's find another word, I believe.
No, the thing is that it's so global. The problem is so global that you cannot solve it globally. I don't believe it can be solved globally, but it can be solved locally. Because if Europe, for example, will start implementing regenerative agriculture practice, and then for the next 3 years the prices per the income of the farmer will drop, then what actually it's happening with the Green New Deal. They start. It's a movement, but then in USA and South America, they're using a lot of GMO for growing corn and soya, and their yields per hectare there are double than in Europe. So if you play globally, then it's working. But if you're not playing globally, and everyone should play fair, but it's not gonna happen that everyone will play fair. So I don't have the solution, but I think the solution should be local, but not looking in global scale. I'm not gonna expect Brazil to quit GMO. It's not gonna happen. To play fair, so they're not playing fair. Okay.
I really liked what all of you said about respect, about community together with the animals and everything. And I was thinking, in education point of view, where would you see this information? Because I feel that you see the problem differently, the problem of agriculture differently. Not like my colleagues or some of my teachers who are thinking about it only from money perspective, you know. Where would you see, or what kind of material in schools would you see that would, I don't know, ring the bell for the others? To
Create
do
awareness.
things differently. Yeah, even for children who that I don't know, that don't know what a potato is. Or I have a friend who has a lot of land, and I'm studying horticulture for 1 year, and I was showing him how the plants grow, and he said that, oh my God, I feel somehow different about all the plants in my garden now. So there are some things that many people lack in, I don't know, the consciousness of what really is going on, why we eat, what we eat, why we produce, what we produce, and how, and I don't know. So, I don't know. How would you say it in education point?
So I started my journey as working with children in schools, doing schoolyard garden with children. I was every Saturday with Wana here for 3-4 years, with group of children doing gardening and then eating at the end of the courses, the full season. And I was doing that because I realized after one sabbatic year doing permaculture, it was 2012, I realized that if I want to do a change, that will be a good context to create change. And then I was doing that for 5 years without being paid. And realized that what I'm doing is a public service, and I cannot do it for forever. And what my suggestion is, if we want to teach ecology and gardening and food for children, we should have a paid staff for that. And then and what I tried then is to let the garden to the teachers, but they don't have the appropriate knowledge to use garden as an educational tool. So unfortunately, we don't have enough people with skills to teach gardening. I think gardening for me was back then. I still believe it, but I don't. I believe it's a good way of teaching, but I don't believe that is gonna happen because as I look it in the future, we don't have enough money for that. We're not investing money into that. But I will suggest that having gardening schools, gardening hours in schools, that will be amazing. And then if you look at universities, horticulture universities in Bucharest, they're wasting money. For me, I've been there for 2 years. I don't think that if you go there, I went there. We receive a lot of students in our farm, and I ask who wants to be a farmer, and nobody wants to be a farmer. Spending 4 years of their life listening to someone that they're not up to date to knowledge, and for me that school is for nothing. It's good to have that degree. It's good for if you want to apply for European funds or something. But if you really want to learn, you need the experience. And because in French we have they have I know how many months of 3 months per year of internship or something. In they invest the time. If you're a student, you have to go 3 months in a farm per year. That's good. In Romania, we have 2 weeks, and that 2 weeks is like just coming. They're looking, and they're leaving. When students, their teacher are coming with students in our farm, and we say if they will stay, they will be kicked off in the farm. Nobody's staying in the farm. Everyone is working. So it's not enough practical education. That's for me. If you want to train future farmers, practical education, invest money into that, and we're gonna solve the problem. Because anyway, they are money, but they are spending on PowerPoints.
I want to try to answer your question practically about what could be a key target area, and I think it's I don't know how we allow it to be the reality that the people who end up eating the worst quality, most highly processed foods are youth and the vulnerable. So people who are in hospitals and children in schools end up eating some of the most highly processed meals. If especially we think about school children eating highly processed school lunches, this eating a diet which is rich in fats and salt and sugar, it warps your mind and changes your taste buds and changes your associations with food. So if they're not getting good food at home and then getting fed highly processed food in schools, they're not going to develop a taste or knowledge of vegetables or a diverse palate. So as much work as there is to be done in changing practices on the farm, there's changing practices in food policy and public nutrition, and I think schools and hospitals as public purchasers of local products, it's a great crossover point in potentially increasing the purchase, increasing the accessibility of locally produced foods to the most vulnerable populations. And I'm not sure of the exact history in Romania, but luckily still in Hungary there is a legacy of school garden programs, and we regularly try to participate in supporting this legacy by regularly hosting groups of students for at least 10-day periods, but sometimes more frequent visits, or these camps in which they stay on the farm and participate in the farm work for a period of time. And it's really amazing to see the transformation that even the most brainwashed urban young person can go through after spending 10 days, which is a short time, on a farm. But this is work that we do extra. So it's another thing to add to the list of tasks at the end of the day, is also to re-educate young people on how to willingly consume more vegetables and also learn about how they're produced. And we need help doing this. So I hope that there's more support for these type of changes in school systems and public canteens, and also maintaining the opportunities for keeping gardening programs at schools, because you can't ask or expect farmers to take this on as another task in addition to the hundreds of things they already have to do.
So since this was the last question, I would like to thank you all for participating, and our panelists and Anka, who is no longer here, for their answers, because I think we are now a little bit more aware about what can be changed, how it can be changed, even though we don't have all the answers, and this was not the point anyway. So thank you, and let's